Good afternoon and welcome to the School for Change Agents 2019. It is a pleasure to be here with you as ever, and we're here for our bonus session today on leading change for personalised care. With me today I have about 24 leaders of change. Do you want to just give us a wave? We can see you there. Leaders of change in the NHS in personalised care. We've been spending the day at the National Personalised Care Collaborative, and this session is coming to you live from the heart of London today. So I'm delighted to be with you. Here are a few reminders to mute your mobile, hang a sign, and close your emails. And I'm also pleased that for the first session, most of you in the chat box are saying that the sun is shining in the UK. So let's just enjoy that for a moment. So let's just move on and look at where we are in terms of our live sessions. So we're on live learning session number 6 of 6. I'm sorry, it's all coming to an end. We've looked at how change starts with each one of us, resilience as an act of defiance. We've thought about purpose and power, moved to action through the use of storytelling. Last week, Helen led us through a session that looked at complexity and how we use that as change agents. And this week, we're doing a deep dive with some super activists, some super change agents in personalised care. So let me introduce to you the team that we have with us today. So we've got 2 special presenters with us. We have Dame Philippa Russell and John Evans, MBE. I'll be hosting alongside Catherine Wilton from the Personalised Care Group. Our WebEx hosts are Paul and Pardeep, who will be making the magic happen. And Ollie, bless them, has been doing more than he usually has to get all the tech working in various places, ably supported by Rosie. Claire is going to be monitoring the chat alongside Sasha, who'll be backup presenter, and you've already heard from him. And then on social media, we have Bev and Ian, who we'll be hearing from shortly. So we just move forward to look at what is happening on Futurelearn, and my goodness, there is a quality of conversation on Futurelearn around leading change for personalised care. So if you've not yet been in, please do go into the Futurelearn platform and take part in the discussion. There are case studies, videos, visuals, testimonies, and people posting from all over the world what their experience is of making personalised care a reality. But as ever, in the tradition of the School for Change Agents, we're going to start with an annotation. So I hope you have your annotation fingers at the ready. And in a moment, I'm going to ask Paul and Pardeep to unleash the tools. We're going to start with this question. Who do you think should make decisions about the care that you and your family receive? Now, at 1 on the left, we have that healthcare staff and managers should be making all the decisions. And on the right, at 5, we think that me and my family should be making all the decisions. Where do you fit on that? I love this. We're getting something that looks a little bit like an exotic fish coming out of here. And Andre wants his to stand out. He's going to have his name there. I love it. Got colleagues from New York who are putting them in the middle. If you put it more towards the 1 and 2, which a few of you have, and you're able to use the chat box to tell us why, all my personalised care colleagues in the room I'm laughing at that because I think they've put theirs at number 10, but only in their heads. So that's great. We have what I would expect from a group of change agents, which is a really good spread that needs explaining, and a majority of us leaning towards us as individuals having a role in the decisions about our health and care. So I'll just move us on to our second annotation when that one is wiped. So this question, how important is what matters to people for your local health and care services? So in your experience, whether it's at the point of care, as a senior leader, as a patient, an activist, how much do you think your local health and care services value the question, what matters to people? And on the left, for 1, we've got what matters for people is central to the way healthcare around here is provided. And on the right at 5, we've got what matters to people is basically irrelevant to the way healthcare around here is planned and provided. And again, we've got a wide spread there. I can see some of you fitting into the camp of saying it's not particularly relevant, but most of you are coming in on the left-hand side that it's central, which is, again, encouraging. So do please keep using that chat box to share the learning with you. I should say that we're taking a lot of the data and ideas that we're gathering from the school and feeding it into the way the NHS thinks about improvement and change. And as we mentioned in Module 1, we'll be producing some form of report on the school later this year using all of the insights that you've given us over the course of the past 6 weeks. So Paul and Pardeep, if I could just ask you to pause those incoming annotations, and let's get ready to look at what we're covering in session number 6. So in today's session, we're going to cover personalised care and explaining what that is, and claiming that it's the next frontier of change in health and care. We'll be looking at leading change through this lens and how informal influence can be as powerful as formal authority. And we'll be hearing from those super change agents who are already working to drive a movement that unleashes the energy of other people. As usual, we have a beautiful sketch note from our own Lee Kendall to explain the journey that we're going to go on over the next 55 minutes. And that's the next slide. We'll be looking at how change matters to everyone, and we all deserve a full life. We'll be talking about ideas of choice and control, and looking in particular at the independent living movement as a catalyst for change in England. And then we'll be looking at this idea of agency again, the power to make a difference in everybody's life. So it's my great pleasure at this point to introduce Catherine Wilton from the Personalised Care team, who's going to lead us through the first part of this module. Catherine, can you hear me?
I can. Can everybody hear me?
Hear you loud and clear.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Catherine. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here, part of the Horizons School for Change Agents, something I've followed over many years myself. And I'm extremely lucky to be an associate at Horizons. But as Catherine said, working now is the personalised care group in NHS England and Improvement, trying to drive forward personalised care throughout the NHS in England. But in terms of myself, I've 25 years of my career probably. I could describe it, I guess, as on a mission to provide more choice and control to people who need care and support services, and also about building strong communities, which I'm extremely passionate about. If you had a chance to blog on Futurelearn about how things didn't go so well for my dad when he really needed care, you'll know that I believe in order to make change happen, I think we need to get personal. We need to really think about what matters to us and our family, and would the care and support that I'm seeing around me be enough for our families, for the people that we care about? And if it isn't, what can we do to change it? What little things can we do together to be part of a movement for changing things? So I'm part of a team in NHS England, but we can't achieve change together. That's why we've got amazing change agents over there in another part of London today. Hello, shout out to Catherine and all your colleagues over there. But we want to go further, which is why we wanted to use School for Change agents. So those people that have been part of the School for Change this year, how can we tap into your amazing energy for change and get you to join our mission, really, to do your bit to drive forward personalised care through the NHS? You know, will you join us? Because we will only succeed if we unite around the need for change and actually involve more people as we're doing it. And we all have a lot to play in the bigger picture. So over the next sort of half an hour or so, I'm going to be taking you through some of the main things that you need to know about personalised care. Its origins, actually, in the independent living movement. I'm going to be talking about what it means in the NHS and the different components of that. And then, most excited about this, we've got Dame Philippa Russell and John Evans, MBE, who I'm going to interview about their experience of leading change over a number of years, and what we can learn from their mission in the work that we might want to do into promoting personalised care. So before we move forward, What I want to talk about really is the origins of the personalised care movement. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about how that started. I'm going to need to change the slides. I don't think I've got the ball. I can ask somebody else to change the slides, Paul, if that's okay. So
you should have the ball there, Catherine.
Okay, I'm just going to ask Rosie to help me. I'm not very good with the technical side of it.
Paul, would you mind taking the ball back actually and just doing
Yeah,
it?
I'll just do it. Just prompt me when you'd like the slides moving, Catherine.
Okay, next slide then, thank you. So this by Pen Mendonça, who has been very kind enough to share that with us to use on the School for Change, actually shows where personalised care originated. So this wasn't actually, because it's an NHS policy, we might fool ourselves into thinking this was invented by managers or doctors in a room with a closed door, but it actually isn't. Personalisation as a movement started with the independent living movement and with disabled people and their families and carers fighting for choice and control in their own lives. And you can see that this actually shows a journey right through from the 1960s, and Pen needs to update the slide for us, but she's got to 2008 here, to show that people fighting for to come out of long stay institutions and actually getting freedom themselves in the 1980s, through to collaborating with policymakers, innovators and others to eventually have the law change so that everyone with social care needs is entitled to have a direct payment for their care. And of course that then takes us on to personalised care in the NHS as it is today. So next slide please, Paul. So we're extremely excited because this has been, you know, many people's careers and getting it to this point. In the NHS, just after Christmas, personalised care became part of NHS policy. And the idea is that personalised care will be business as usual for the NHS. A focus on personalised care is one of the 5 key changes to the NHS that will take place over the next 5 years. And next slide, please, Paul. And these are the 6 components of it. So when we're talking about personalised care in health, these are the things that we're actually saying need to happen at a local level so that people can get that choice and control. First thing on this list is personal health budgets. So that's where people get direct control over their care and treatment by having a designated amount of money they actually get to spend on meeting their own healthcare outcomes. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment. The second component is care and support planning, where people with a long-term condition are able to have a proper conversation with the people that support them about what matters to them in the context of their whole life. And then that moves us on to shared decision making, which is for everybody. And it was really interesting, the annotations, Catherine, I thought, because, and some of the comments I saw in the chat, because actually the NHS supports shared decision making. It's not actually that one person is right and another person is wrong. We need to move away from a them and us situation and actually think about we're all experts and bringing different parts of expertise into a conversation. So it is about equal partnerships between people and those supporting them. Now that doesn't mean, of course, that we don't have to shift the balance of power, because actually traditionally power has been held in the hands of the people making decisions about care and actually providing care. So that does involve a shift, but it probably doesn't involve a complete shift of taking power away from clinicians. It's actually about sharing that. The fourth thing, and this is something really close to my heart, is what we call social prescribing. Social prescribing is a way of people to really important supports in their community that are absolutely vital for their well-being. The thing is supporting people to self-manage, and this is about helping people to live well, stay well, and to not need treatment in the first place. And that might be through specialist health coaching. It might be through education. So, for example, if you were diagnosed with a long-term condition, you might get to go on a course to help you, for example, manage your diabetes in the best way you could. Or it might be linking you up with a peer support group, people who've got the same condition, who you might be able to learn from, and actually they might be able to help you. And then the last part of personalised care is choice. So that's not just choice about your provider or choice about where you go. It is really linked to shared decision making. It's informed choice about what the best treatment is for. And I did see some things in the chat earlier and also on Twitter. It is the idea of choice can be quite contentious, but there are legal rights to choice now for some aspects of healthcare, and really important to give people some choice and control. So moving on to the next slide then, Paul, thank you. A little bit about personal health budgets for those people who haven't heard of them maybe or don't know much about them. So personal health budgets are a way of helping people to meet their own health and well-being outcomes, which is just impossible to do through a one-size-fits-all, very large health and care system here in the UK. So this is a young man called Dylan who wanted to go to university and was looking forward to doing so, just like a young man in his position. But unfortunately, he was going to have to go with his carers because the wheelchair that the NHS had provided for him for his health needs was not actually, he was not actually able to transfer in and out of the wheelchair on his own. And he also, apparently, the charging point of the wheelchair was underneath. Rosie, I'm just going to ask you to bring up the screen again, because I don't know your password.
Oh gosh. It's still recording.
So, unfortunately, the NHS wasn't able to do anything about Dylan's wheelchair until the fantastic team where he lives said, well, let's look into an integrated health and social care budget. Because social care was spending a lot of money on carers for him, and he didn't really want them to go to university with him and cramp his style. So through an integrated health and social care budget, he was enabled to have the wheelchair that meted his full needs as a person so that he could be completely independent and go to university on his own. And of course, that saved thousands of pounds in carer costs. Next slide then, please, Paul. Why does social prescribing matter? So this is something very close to my heart. And sometimes people think this is the kind of like woolly, nice to have part of health. You know, the treatment end is a really important end. Why, you know, social prescribing, nice to have, but can we really afford it? Actually, social prescribing is vital because the networks we have and the relationships we have within communities actually save lives. Really decent studies, meta-analyses in fact, that show that people with strong social relationships are 50% more likely to survive than people who don't have close networks of support, sort of family, friends and community. So we're talking about social networks. We're not talking about necessarily being on Facebook, although your social network can include that. It's actually your network of people that you've got around you to support you. And you're less likely to die of a heart attack. You're less likely to for your dementia to progress quickly. You're much, much more likely to have a really happy life and to need services if you've got lots and lots of connections. So next slide, please, Paul. So social prescribing is a way for really busy clinicians to help people connect with their communities and to have experts who are social prescribing link workers to help them make those connections. And they're going to be coming to a primary care network near you soon. So some of these link worker services, of course, have been going on for quite a long time in different parts of the country already. This, again, isn't something that has just been invented by NHS managers in a closed room. Social prescribing has been going on for quite a long time. For example, the U Trust in Portsmouth have been supporting hundreds of people over the last few years, being referred to by GP practices. They can take the time to have a conversation with the person about what matters to them when the actual busy primary care service wouldn't have time to do that. And actually to refer them and actually introduce them to places where they can either get support or they can contribute to their community, because actually contributing is a really, really important part of our well-being as well. So people are not burdens on society, they're actually huge assets. And it could be volunteering, it could be interest groups. A friend of mine, her son does World War II reenactment. Whatever it is, whatever you're interested in, you can be prescribed social prescription for. Next, Paul. So co-production and shared decisions are absolutely vital. So you may have seen this before. It's quite a well-known slide showing that if you just have professionals designing something, you won't actually get that amazing meeting of people and professionals, and you won't get the outcomes that you want. So if you spend all the money designing the path on the right-hand side, but you don't listen to actually where people want to walk, then you actually get two different roads and a complete waste of resources. So I just love that slide, a metaphor really for working with experts by experience. The next slide, please, Paul. And why do shared decisions matter? Because if you have a long-term condition or a social care need, then actually you're living your life every day, aren't you? You're kind of living your life thousands of hours every year, and you might only spend 10 of those with a health professional. And yet you have episodic consultations at the convenience of the service. But actually what we want to do is to make sure that people get the support that they need when they need it, and that through proactive care and support planning and shared decisions, people can actually manage their own conditions better and essentially lead the life they want to live. Thank you very much. So I'm going to pass over now to hear what's going on in the chat.
Thank you, Catherine. Really interesting. And first of all, apologies to you all for the sound. We're going to see if we can fix that during the chat session. Lots of discussion, I think, playing out a lot of the tensions of dealing with personalisation and population health and getting the right balance between that. Some interesting examples popping up. Tori mentions Birdsong, which I agree is really interesting. Challenges around where decisions should be made, and many of the conversations that we've been having as personalisation and choice have found their space in the system. So lots of really interesting comments. Please keep adding to them. And back to you, Catherine.
I think we're going to go over to social media now and see what's happening there.
What's happening on social media?
Hi all, it's Ian. Can you hear me?
We can, Ian.
Oh, great. Okay. So a couple of things with regards to social media. First of all, I think that there is an absolute love for the visual interpretation of personalised care that's been shared with everybody over the first 20 minutes or so. A couple of people have commented, and particularly Rhonda, who relayed to us through Twitter a story about choice in personalised care when somebody was going through cancer treatment, and about how choice is a fundamental underpinning of personalised care. And also Danielle, who just said to us that she was looking forward to this afternoon session because she wants to put into practice what she learns this afternoon. So I hope that this session's doing that for you as well, Danielle. So some nice things coming through on Twitter also.
And just a shout out as well to Gabrielle and Jackie in the room who were tweeting beautifully. So please keep that up. And Simone, who got caught in traffic, so she's now sat in a park listening and tweeting. So everybody seems to be enjoying it today.
Thank you so much. So delighted now to welcome some special guests. Paul, if we could have the next slide, please. I love this quote by Margaret Mead because I think this sums up what we're about to hear next, which is about how two people in work that they've done have actually managed to change things for many thousands of others. And actually it's a kind of call to arms for all of us, isn't it, that the small thing we might be able to do actually makes a real difference to others. So I'm actually delighted to welcome here Dame Philippa Russell. I hope you can pick up both what we're saying. We'll sit near the microphone to make sure that. So Dame Philippa Russell was chair of the Standing Commission on Carers, and as Disability Rights Commissioner, she led a formal investigation into health inequalities as experienced by people with learning disabilities or mental health issues. She never ceases to amaze and delight me with her stories of her campaigning journey, from her lived experience of caring for her disabled son and being ambitious for him, to tea with Margaret Thatcher. 2019, so she was born in Sheffield, but she's actually a New Zealander, she tells me, and she's travelled all over the world to promote the rights of disabled people and carers. So welcome, Dame Russell.
I'm delighted to be with you.
The next slide, please, Paul. And then joining us from Hampshire, we have John Evans, MBE. John Evans, it's an MBE actually, sorry John, we need to upgrade you there, don't we? He was the first person in the UK to have an independent living scheme, and through determination and force of will, persuade and cajole the authorities to let him live independently, and successfully campaigned to change the law so that everybody with social care needs now has the right to a direct payment. And the echoes and the roots of the movement that he and other disabled people started are a golden thread that's woven through what we see personalisation today and personalised care in health. So he's an inspiration to many, but don't mention the rugby unless you want to be upset about Wales' success. It's John Evans, MBE. OBE, sorry. John, welcome.
Thank you.
So when you started, John, and hopefully people have had a chance to read on Futurelearn our sort of potted history of the independent living movement. When you started out with your mission, did you know you were creating something radical, or was this just what was needed there and then?
Well, actually, it was both. We knew it was about something that was desperately needed then, as the times were changing, as popular say, and so were disabled people. We no longer expected or assumed decisions about our lives to be made by social and healthcare professionals, but by ourselves. It was our lives, and we were talking about issues which affected us all personally. It was about choice and control. We also knew it was very radical and wasn't going to be easy. The social model of disability and independent living were the two big ideas of the 1970s and 1980s. We knew it was right, and it was the right time after gaining our inspiration from our US colleagues who developed independent living in their country. I personally felt a very strong buzz with it. I felt it felt like a new drug in that social policy for disabled people had to change. And I was fortunate enough in having money be provided for me to do 6 weeks research in the United States and going to the heart of where independent living started in Berkeley, California.
Thank you, John. And we can see in the background there some photographs that you kindly shared with us of the marches and all sorts of campaigns that you went on over the years. Brilliant. So could you tell the change agents on the line then, John, what sort of things you did to get started?
We knew we needed to do a lot of homework and prepare ourselves as meticulously as possible in order to succeed. We got a group together of committed peers to plan it. We worked out on what we would need is to do research well and how we could best communicate and get our points across. We knew people needed to come first, and the majority of these needed to be disabled people. We did not totally exclude non-disabled people, though, as we needed lots of people with specific skills to help us in our cause, because that was valuable too. We needed to do more research about how they managed to develop independent living in the US. However, we had to do it within the confines of the UK social welfare state, which is very different from the US model. We also found out more similar ideas and schemes going on elsewhere in this country. This became a UK network to support each other and exchange creative ideas, which would be useful for our cause. And this is important, the peer support of each other.
That's right, and I think, is that a picture of you speaking in the European Parliament there, John? So this became a European movement.
That's right, yeah, I was making a statement on the European Day for Disabled People and talking about how people throughout Europe shouldn't be in institutions as there are in many, and that everybody should have the opportunity and choice to live in the community.
So thank you. Philippa, could you tell us a little bit about how you got started in the personalisation movement?
Well, my son Simon was born 50 years ago when life was very different to what it is now. We were a Foreign Office family living in Central Africa. I brought Simon back to London because he clearly had a number of health problems, and there I was told that he had a lifelong disability, indeed probably a short life expectancy. We were offered a long-stay hospital place. That's what happened then. We were told to get on with our lives, but of course we didn't. But I was lucky. I had an inspirational paediatrician, Dr. Ronnie McKeith, and he told me that my son could have a good life, that there was no need for me and for Simon to be victims, and that if I didn't like things, I should change things. In effect, he told me to be a change agent. He assured me that professionals were not our enemies if we worked with them. He thought that Simon could and should have an ordinary life, and he gave me what was probably the first social prescription, an information prescription to go to MenCap. I was staying in hospital with Simon, and to find out what the options were. And MenCap in turn provided a peer group. I discovered that Simon was deemed ineducable. I had a letter in a red font from the Inner London Education Authority saying that Simon couldn't be registered at school. And I thought, this is ludicrous. No child is ineducable. My son is going to have a life. And then I began my journey, and I found supportive professionals and local government officials. I found other parents and disabled people, and I learned the value of actually seeing the changes to the movement. And above all else, as Ronnie McKee encouraged me to think, that I should be ambitious for Simon. And Simon does now have his own house. He lives in the community, a talented artist, and he's fulfilled all my and his ambitions. But when I look back to his days, which might have been spent in a long-stay hospital, I can see that it's a journey which has to go on, because Simon will probably outlive me.
Thank you, Philippa. It's a brilliant story. Can you tell us a little bit what happened next in terms of your campaigning journey?
In terms of campaigning journey, we realised that we had to make a case, first of all, for all disabled children to be educated. Because if you're not educated, if you're deemed ineducable, your life will be so narrow in many ways. And interestingly, it was then local medical officer of health in the London Borough of Camden who said, I'll put some money into education. We actually have a trial running in Camden and see and how it goes for children with learning disabilities. And it worked. And we lobbied and we presented our case. We found academics, doctors, other parents, disabled people to support us. And then Simon was able to present the bouquet of flowers to Alice Bacon. She was then Minister of Education in the Tory government, and to say thank you for finally admitting that all disabled children were entitled to an education. But it was a long haul. 1976, I was invited up to set up the Council for Disabled Children, a coalition of interested third sector, disability, children's organisations, professionals, national government together to improve disabled children's lives. And we managed to get disabled children into the Children Act 1989. Before then, disabled children weren't really treated as children. They were in the ownership of the NHS, with very few children's rights to anything. But that was a case of co-production. That was a case of working together. And that was the famous occasion when I and Philip Graham from Great Ormond Street, from the Council for Disabled Children, had tea with Mrs. Thatcher to convince her at the last minute that disabled children and their parents had a right to participate and have their voices heard in assessment and planning their futures. And the Iron Lady was indeed a fierce opponent when it came to arguing, but she agreed. And she said to me she didn't know any disabled children, and she felt ashamed that she didn't. Bring a group of disabled children to tea with me next week, she said. And her private secretary hastily wrote what I thought was toasted tea cakes and orange squash in his notebook. And that was a lesson for me. We didn't get everything we wanted, we couldn't. But we were on a journey where disabled children were mainstream, and notwithstanding all the funding and other issues that are around now, it would be unthinkable for disabled children and their parents not to have a voice in any decision that was made about them. Personalisation, in effect, had come.
Thank you very much, Philippa. I was hoping you were going to get the tea with Margaret Thatcher's story in there. So, John, what do you think is important for today's change agents on the call to think about if they want to start something where they live and work?
First of all, I think they need to be totally united in the collective understanding and ambition. Their strength will be in the unity of approach. You may have heard of the expression, nothing about us without us, a wonderful statement. This was, in fact, coined by the independent movement in the 1980s, but just about everybody now uses it, from all sorts of different backgrounds. Many politicians and political groups, and you name it, and they claim it's theirs, but I assure you right now, it came from disabled people. As well as collective action, we need to support each other through peer support, which I mentioned earlier. And we also need leaders and drivers, people to do background work and research, writers and articulate people who can be the spokesperson or spin doctors, if you like. It is important that these days that somebody is allocated to dealing with media, whether it is social media platforms or the conventional media of TV and radio. Most importantly, there will need to be champions working within the system. We have seen so many successes with champions getting senior policymakers to understand the importance of independent living and enabling direct payments legislation to be implemented. It was incredible in the 1980s when we got going. It wasn't because of a man who was the head of disability services at that time, understanding our vision and the importance of people taking control and choice over their lives. It would never happen. But it can happen in many, many cases. Even the Direct Payments Act legislation, if it wasn't because of certain MPs, that would never have come about.
Brilliant, John, absolutely. You need lots of people involved in this journey, don't you, bringing different expertise. Philippa, I don't know if you want to add to that. What do you think are the main building blocks, qualities that we need to have collectively as a movement to ensure that change happens, that we can move forward with personalised care?
I agree absolutely with everything John's just said. You need to build up a strong body of peer support. And peer support doesn't happen automatically. So I'm well aware from my own experience with my son, you need to talk to convince, to engage the next generation that's coming up behind you, the potential supporters who are perhaps afraid of the risk of somebody who may appear vulnerable moving towards a more independent life. I think as a parent, and all parents are worried about their children, aren't they, and their independence, but you can't stop most of your children from doing things they want. Simon wanted to move out of a small group home where he'd gone after a residential college. He had a good life, he was interested in horticulture and art, but he wanted a home of his own. Very frightened about leaving the traditional, safe, what we saw as home life in that little group home. But we took the risk, because we realised that what Simon wanted. And an important building block here is for those of us that have actually embraced the concept of independent living, the flexibility of personal budgets, to share our experiences. And I think we do need to build a much stronger evidence base, certainly for and family carers like myself, about what does work and why it's worth investing in some different models of care. And I feel that commissioners in particular need to be constantly educated and re-educated about the lessons that can be learned from lived experience. Could you say a little bit more about that, Philippa? How do you create that evidence base that you need? Well, the National Audit Office has raised this issue. It raised it in a report last year. It said now we have a large number of what one might call micro-commissioners and micro-providers, people who are often families or individual disabled people who are coordinating a web of care and support around them, often not using traditional services, but using community projects. My son, Pallant House Art Gallery's Partners in Art scheme is the mainstay of his life, not a traditional service. And I think we have to explore together what the different options actually are, how they work, how we success, and also to be engage the people who are living the personalised life, because sometimes things do need to change. We need a certain amount of flexibility and we need mutual trust. And I would also like to see family carers, in the same way that disabled people have done, to become change agents and active within their own local authorities, within their local and national NHS, because unless we're willing to be part of the process of continuous improvement, we are going to be part of the problem.
Thank you. And John, what do you think we need to do to create more change agents in terms of convincing people who might be sceptical about personalised care?
I think we need to have more role models people who change policy for the better. They are always the best examples. We also need to show how positive these changes have been in transforming the lives of so many disabled people, carers and citizens for the best, and how it makes economic sense. We need to direct them, the many moving stories there are of people who have changed. It's quite astonishing, and so there's more than enough around to be able to use. We also need to demonstrate the positive partnerships that can occur when organizations, service users and carers work together to develop change. In the old days, we were quite divided, disabled people and carers, but when we realized how strong we could be working together, changed a lot. And finally, and last but not least, one of my passionate ideas and things these days is co-production. Co-production is vital. It brings together senior policymakers and providers with disabled people and carers and others to move the agenda forward cohesively. So co-production is the child of the independent living movement. Nothing about us without us. But I think it is also important today, when we're talking about personalized care, that co-production will be the dynamic that will change that. And I know we are trying to do this in the area where I live in Hampshire and people in other parts of the country, because without it, it will not happen. Because professionals cannot do it themselves. They have to involve us and engage us. And that's not on a consultative basis. It's working in partnership together. And you need people who have excellent negotiating skills, because you need to be able to change people's mindsets. And that's not always that easy.
Thank you, John. So just really quickly to finish, your three top tips for change agents in moving forward personalised care.
Well, there are lots of top tips, but I'll try and come up with three. First of all, believe in what you're doing is right, and that it will change and transform the lives of many people. Don't be afraid of challenging authorities or the status quo, and do not be intimidated by figures of authority. Make sure you have enough people to spread the load and allocate roles, because you cannot do everything yourself all alone. And last but not least, make sure you have fun doing it. Make light of what you are doing and do not see it as a burden, because we have great fun as well as achieving many things.
Thank you, John, for that. Absolutely, I agree with you. We've got to have fun. Why have a meeting if you can have a party instead, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Philippa, just to finish then, your three top tips for driving forward personalised care in the NHS.
My three top tips. First, I'd see creativity, because the NHS long-term plan and the Care Act permit us to think very differently about health and social care and support. And creativity means working with the full range of providers, of creative groups, of users, carers within your particular area. Secondly, I would say, of course, as John has said, co-production, because co-production turns people who have been, if you like, passive recipients of services, hoping they get some support, into proactive designers of circles of support and lives worth living for themselves. And thirdly, I think we still need to get very much better about using our community resources, about recognising that disabled people, carers, do not necessarily need something special, and looking at how we can create more genuinely inclusive communities.
Thank you very much, Philippa. And thank you, John. It's been an absolute pleasure to interview you, have you on School for Change. I hope you'll remain with us, John, until the end of the session. You just might need to make sure that you mute your microphone when you're not speaking. But thank you all for listening. I hope you found that inspirational. Shall we see what's happening on the chat?
Thank you, Catherine. And I think the chat reflects what you've just said. People have been inspired by what Philippa and John have said. So thank you from all of us to you both. I think many of the themes that we've been talking about throughout the School for Change Agents this year have just been wonderfully practically illustrated, and people have got real strength from the stories, and I think they resonate completely with discussions over the last few weeks. And I think the small note of warning around, you just beautifully described co-production, but there's something about the word that separates it from its purpose sometimes, and can we find a better description to help? And finally, I think lots of examples of new services picking up all the principles that have been discussed, popping up all over. So all the signs that a movement is underway with all the hard work that's being done.
Thank you, Sasha. And shall we hear what's going on Twitter?
Hi everybody, it's Ian again. Similarly on Twitter, real respect and love for both John and Dame Philippa in terms of the last 20 minutes or so. It's certainly made an impression on a number of people. Again, some debate about the support and the peer networks that are needed around personalised care. And Nancy in particular was reminding us of the importance of that, of having that human network around people that can support their living, their care or their treatment. So some really nice things happening on Twitter, Catherine.
And a couple from me. I think co-production has come through loud and clear, and nothing about us without us has been reinforced in some of the tweets. And one I particularly liked was why have a meeting when you can have a party and make some change really happen. So really good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think I'm handing back over to Catherine Pereira in Coin Street with the other change agent.
Hello, can you hear me? So we're back at Coin Street, and there's been more than 100 of us over the course of the day working on personalised care as part of a national collaborative. I'm now joined by 3 of those people. I'm joined firstly by Nick Gitcham, who has responsibility for making much of the coordination around the national personalised care collaborative happen. Nick, hello.
Hello, really great to be here and to hear John and Philippa grounding us in where personalised care has come from. So fantastic session today.
So I think we're going to move on, and Paul, if you can help us on the slides, just to this idea that your position in the informal network is as important as your position in the formal hierarchy. And Nick, what's your experience of that as a leader in personalised care?
Yeah, so we've been working with just over a third of the country on how they can roll out personalised care across big geographical areas and do this at scale so it becomes business as usual. And I think some of the things that we're learning is it's really important to have a common understanding about what you mean about personalised care. So we've just published the Universal Personalised Care document, which is for the long-term plan in England. But it's all about those conversations with people with lived experience, with people from all of the different sectors and from the community about what's the problem we're trying to solve here, and what does good personalised care look like? How would we know it? What would we see? What would we hear? What would we feel? And how would we do this at scale?
So there's something about defining the change that you want to see and then making it happen. Nick, thank you very much. Do you want to just give us a quick wave as we go past? I think we can see you on the cameras. We've got a small but dedicated crew of people who've been sat here listening in on the session. And I'm going to come over to John Bunn. So John is one of the people who has responsibility for making this work happen from Bedfordshire, Milton Keynes and Luton.
That's correct.
John, go on, give us your top tips for change agents who want to make this form of radical change happen?
Yeah, I think the sort of my top tips in our area, and we're making some excellent progress, is really threefold. I think senior leader engagement, making sure you've got them involved and they are champions for the change you're trying to make. And I think in linked to that tip is really co-production. So strategic co-production, making sure, and we've used those people with lived experience in our area, and we've used those stories to make sure that the leaders fully understand what we're trying to do and are fully on board. And thirdly, it is just making sure that the staff and the leaders fully understand what we're trying to do, they've heard the stories, and they are fully involved in making a change.
Thank you. So there's something that Helen taught us in our first session of the school about creating a spectrum of allies that applies here. So please do keep us moving through those slides so we can see some of the concepts that underlie what it is that Nick and John are talking about. There's that wonderful quote from Batilana and Caspiaro about the centrality of the informal network as well as the position in the formal hierarchy. And, you know, of all the people I know, possibly this applies most to the next person I want to introduce you to, which is Helen Davis-Cox. Helen works in Torbay and South Devon, which for those of you who are joining us internationally is in the southwest of England, and has been working on versions of what is now known as personalised care, personalisation, for many years. Helen, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Hello.
Give us your top tips for being a change agent, making this work happen.
Okay, so my first one is find your tribe that helps you sustain you in times of good and also in times that are tricky. And keep the faith. The journey you are on may take longer than you initially anticipated. And finally, it starts with you, it really does. So if you haven't already started, when will you commit to start?
Nice. Well, how about now? Nick, any final words that you want to say about how people could use the School for Change Agents to move this work forward?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's loads of really useful materials, such as we've looked at old power, new power, we've looked at qualities of change agents, we've looked at energies of change, of how you need to communicate this in lots of different ways. Some people will need information that speaks to the heart. Other people, your finance directors, need the figures and the facts and the impact. So being really creative and speaking to all. And I think just that confidence of connecting up with people across the country and internationally of a big social movement that enables people to have more choice and control over their lives and support, and their role in convening that change, that all of us have the opportunity to bring people together, start the conversation, start somewhere, and follow it everywhere.
Fantastic. I think that was a quote from Myron Rogers himself right there. Thank you for that. So on the next slide, we have some of the top tips that we have adapted from the work of Greg Sattel. What's going to make this change happen? It's about defining the change we want to see, identifying the pillars of power that we're going to rest what we're doing on, having that spectrum of allies and thinking really creatively about who those people might be. Attracting rather than overpowering. This is classic new power stuff. The attractor principle, do good stuff and other people will come. And building a plan to survive victory. I think it speaks to the long haul that John and Philippa have been talking to us about. This is not a short game. This is years and decades and building each step expansively onto the next. So Catherine, at this point, I'm going to bring you back in because I think you've got an opportunity that you want to make people aware of in terms of being more involved in this work going forward.
Thank you, Catherine. It's been really great to hear some of the change agents there and what you've all been up to. If you have liked what you've heard, we'd like to offer you this opportunity to go on a longer course, a longer programme. This is actually a new programme that we're starting. It's a partnership between all these organisations that you can see at the bottom, including NHS England and Improvement. And it's the Leadership for Empowered Communities in Personalised Care programme. It's fully co-produced. You can see John in the corner there. He wasn't there when we took the photograph, but we couldn't leave him out because he's really, really important part of the team. And it's a five-day course that you can come along and you can actually meet other people who really want to drive forward personalised care. So if you're interested in that, the email address is there at the top to register your interest. We're saying it's cohort 8 because it's actually following on the coattails of a previously successful programme that we've run, but this is actually a new personalised care programme and element to that. Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks very much. And in the last 3 to 4 minutes of the School for Change Agents, if we just move to the next slide, we've seen this one throughout. It is 10 ways to build change agency. And I think we have squarely been in number 7 today. Learn from the best. So people who've been making this happen. Connect also through Horizons to those super change agents. Find us on Twitter and Facebook and through Futurelearn. And it's those connections that will give you your allies and your social support to keep this work going over the long haul. Next slide will show us what Helen Davis Cox summarized so beautifully. Whatever you're meant to do it now, because the conditions are always impossible. And you know, if we take anything from the stories that we heard today from John and Philippa, I think it's that point that we will be told repeatedly that the change that we want to see can't happen, and there are always reasons why. So our first job as people who want to make change is not to accept that, to commit to a different reality for the future. So that brings us to the end of the live modules for the school. On the next slide, we have a reminder for you, if you want to take a screenshot of it, of all the different ways to connect with us now and into the future. If you've not been using Futurelearn, I recommend going on and seeing the amazing stories that people are sharing there, and lots of resources that you're free to use with your teams and with others in the coming weeks and months. That's going to be accessible to anybody, anywhere in the world for the next 10 days or so. And if you choose to upgrade, then you can have access forever, in perpetuity, for as long as Futurelearn makes the course available. You can also connect with us via Twitter, via Facebook, and there's our email if you want access to any resources or any ideas or people that you've heard about over the last 6 weeks. So the final slide, the easiest way to keep in touch with us now is to upgrade through Futurelearn, keep learning through that course, and become a certified change agent. So that means that we will issue you with a certificate. You will be, as you are in any event, a part of our community on an ongoing basis. And the final thing, we've got a sneak preview of them, but if we move to it now, is simply from everybody at NHS Horizons, thank you, and keep in touch. Thanks very much, everyone. Should we say bye? Bye, guys.